Daughter blocked me after the divorce without listening to my side of the story. Contacted me now, 8 years later, to get my inheritance. I, 54M, got divorced from my wife, 48F, 8 years ago, and my daughter, 28F, cut all contact with me and chose her mother's side without even asking me how I felt. Even though my divorce was nearly a decade ago, it has taken a lot of time for me to accept how things turned out to be and make peace with my life. This has been partly because my ex-wife tried to completely destroy my reputation, but mostly because I really loved my daughter, and being completely shut out from her life was harder than anything. As she was an adult at the time, there was no way for me to be in her life unless she wanted me to be, and she seemed sure of her decision to pick her mother over me. I don't have any family of my own except my mom who had Alzheimer's, so the whole ordeal was definitely one of the worst things that has ever happened to me. I tried to contact my daughter several times after the divorce, but she was dead set on being on her mom's side and didn't even try to hear my side of the story. At one point my ex reached out to me and sued me for harassment if I didn't leave my daughter alone. That spelled things out for me and I stopped contacting her. I've spent the last 8 years taking care of my mom and focusing on my career. I've had a few casual relationships here and there, but I feel like I can't fully trust another person after my divorce. Anyway, that has been my life for nearly a decade. Sorry if I seem like a downer. The reason I'm writing this post is because my daughter recently reached out to me after all this time. I was over the moon and thought that she had finally come to her senses and understood that the divorce was not just my fault. It was also comforting in particular because my mother recently passed away and I've been dealing with that grief by myself and was craving some comfort and family. So my daughter reached out to me a few months after my mother passed away. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize and I picked up to hear a woman's voice on the other side. I didn't know it was my daughter and didn't even recognize her voice because it had been that long since we spoke, and I was quite shocked when she introduced herself. She said that she saw on Facebook that her grandma passed away and wanted to check up on me. I was taken aback. I didn't even know that she kept tabs on me online and thought that was sweet of her. I thanked her for calling and said that I was doing all right and told her that I missed her. We talked for a bit and she said that if I want to meet and actually catch up in person instead of the phone, she would like that. I was extremely happy and agreed immediately. We agreed to meet at my house over the weekend. I was really excited about meeting her after all these years, so I am writing this post to share my excitement with anyone who might be reading. I hope we can rebuild our relationship again, or at least get to know each other. My daughter came over to have dinner with me because I wanted to cook for her. I was nervous and excited. When I first opened the door, I absolutely didn't recognize her because it's been nearly a decade since I last saw her and she was just a little girl back then. We started talking, and even though it was a little awkward at first, I think we both opened up after a while. She told me about her life and what she does for work, and I told her about my life. After dinner, we finally acknowledged the elephant in the room. I asked her why she never bothered to listen to my side of the story during the divorce and chose her mom by default. I admitted that her mother was more present as a parent because she was a stay-at-home mom, and back then I worked in construction and worked long hours, but I always tried my best to take out as much time as I possibly could for my daughter. My daughter then said that she regrets how things turned out and that she was too young to think things through and got manipulated by how her mom made things sound. Basically, my ex-wife painted me as the ultimate bad guy who didn't care about anyone except himself, and since she never got to hear my side of the story, she never questioned whatever her mom said. We talked a bit more about this and things were going well until she finally revealed why she was there. We had been talking for hours at that point when I asked her what made her reach out to me after all these years. She looked a little uncomfortable and I told her that she could be honest with me. Well, then she said that she really had been keeping tabs on me through Facebook, and when she found out that her grandmother had died, she thought lawyers would contact her about her inheritance, and when no one did, she thought she should reach out to me personally. She said that she wanted to give me some time and space to grieve, but she had recently gotten engaged and could really use some money to help out with the wedding expenses. It felt like getting punched in the gut, honestly. I thought that after all these years my prayers were answered and I could have a family again, but it turns out she never cared for me in the first place, and all this was a way for her to get her inheritance. The funniest thing is that it's not even her inheritance. Legally it's all mine. And if only she wasn't such a terrible daughter to me, she would definitely end up with most, if not all, of it. I don't care about money, I never have, honestly. I live in a house of my own, don't have any expensive hobbies, and mostly buy my clothes from Target. Even if the inheritance wasn't in question in the first place, I wouldn't have minded helping out with her wedding at all if she had reached out nicely instead of trying to take advantage of me and only caring about the inheritance. All of this was going through my head at the same time. I somehow maintained my composure and asked her if that was all she wanted. She got very defensive and said that the inheritance comes second and her actual goal was to connect with me, and she would never forgive herself for not reaching out while her grandmother was alive. She said that she had wanted to reach out for years but never got the courage to actually do it because she thought I would never forgive her for kicking me out without an explanation, and that she was also manipulated by her mom. But I could see from the panicked look on her face that she was just trying to smooth things out so I could forgive her, and I wondered if she was just after the money. I asked her how she knew she had an inheritance, and she said that a couple of years before the divorce she was visiting my late mother and she told her that she wanted her to inherit everything left by my father, who passed away years ago, as she was the only grandchild in the family. I don't have any siblings, and at that point my marriage was fine, so I understand why my mother might have said that to my daughter. I mean, if the divorce never happened or my daughter didn't abandon me for years after the divorce, the money would have been hers, as I've already mentioned. But the thought of her only caring about the money and giving me false hope was absolutely crushing. I was devastated but did my best not to let her know. At that moment I thought the only way of testing my daughter's intentions would be to see how she would react if I told her there was no money to inherit. I asked her how much she expected from the inheritance, and she made quite a decent guess. I could tell that some planning went into this whole thing. I then told her that I'm sorry to disappoint her, but that her grandmother actually left everything to me years ago and I plan on using that money to start a business, so I couldn't help her out. I offered to help out for her wedding with my own money by offering a few grand for wedding expenses. The disappointment on her face proved my worst fears. She said that she appreciated my offer, but as the only grandchild, she deserves at least some of the inheritance because it's her grandma's money that she was offered. I told her that I wished I could help her, but my decision was final and there was nothing I could do for her if she wasn't happy with the money I was offering. She went completely red in the face and started getting visibly angry. She told me again to reconsider my decision, but I reiterated that I was going to stick to what seemed right to me. And that's when she showed her true colors and said something that confirmed all my doubts regarding her true intentions. She told me that she should have known that I'll always be the selfish a-hole her mom said I was, and she's glad I'm alone in life. I looked at her with barely concealed disgust. Her words were hurtful, but at that point, I knew what to expect. I just didn't expect her to get that brutally honest that fast, that's all. She started to say something else, but I stopped her before she could speak. I told her that I should have known she was her mother's daughter and that the only reason she would reach out to anyone was to ask for a favor. I also told her that using the fact that I was grieving for my mother to try and manipulate me was disgusting, even for a person like her. She tried to say something at that point, but I just laughed in her face and said that if only she had not blocked me all those years ago, she would have gotten my texts about her grandmother and would have probably gotten most, if not all, of the inheritance. That sentence had the effect I wanted. She looked utterly baffled and asked me what I meant. I told her to unblock me on her old number so I could resend her all the texts that could never get delivered. Well, she did. I forwarded all the texts where I begged her to hear me out and even let her know that her grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer and I wanted them to meet before she forgot about her only grandchild completely. This was completely true, as at the beginning of her illness my mom did often mention my daughter and ask to see her. I remember how it broke my heart to not be able to fulfill that wish. And now this ungrateful, cruel child had the audacity to ask for inheritance. To my daughter's credit, I will admit that she looked ashamed after reading all of those messages. She apologized to me but said that looking at these messages it was clear that her grandma would want her to have her share of the inheritance and it isn't fair for me to punish her like this. She said that she was young and didn't know any better during the divorce, or else she would have handled things differently. She also told me that she genuinely wants to rebuild our relationship, and if I choose to be selfish now she won't feel comfortable in continuing our relationship. I told her that if money is what makes or breaks it for her, then maybe it's better if we don't have a relationship at all. I wanted to believe her when she said all that crap about rebuilding our relationship. I truly did, but at that point, I couldn't. I told her that I would consider giving our relationship another chance, but the inheritance was out of the question. She looked at me with pure hatred and left my house. I didn't try to stop her at all. Since then I've spoken to a few of my friends. Most of them agree that I did the right thing. But one of my closest friends said that since I don't really care about the money, I should just forget about it and let my daughter have at least some of it if it meant having family in my life. I don't agree with this, but ever since he said it I can't get it out of my head. Should I give my daughter part of my inheritance? Update 1. Hi there, this post got a lot more responses than I thought it would. Thanks for your advice and opinions, it gave me the perspective I needed. I guess I'll start by answering the most common question. What happened during my divorce? I haven't spoken about it for years, but I guess it can't hurt anymore. So my wife and I were married for 23 years. You'd think after all those years she wouldn't be able to stab me in the back, but she did. I really don't want to get into the details, but I found out that she was cheating on me with multiple men. Apparently, it had been going on for years before I finally found out. When I found out I was completely devastated. I didn't know how to confront her, so I started drinking heavily and sleeping around as well. I nearly destroyed my life. I fought a lot with her, and I guess that and the drinking made it really easy for her to manipulate my daughter into taking her side. After nearly a year of living like that and being separated, we finally confronted each other and got divorced. My ex-wife used to be a journalist at the time and is kind of a local celebrity. She used her influence to try to destroy my reputation and was nearly successful. After the divorce, it took me a lot of time to quit drinking and get back to my normal life. As I've said already, my daughter completely abandoning me did not help, to say the least. I'll admit that when I found out about my ex's affairs, I kind of went off the rails and wasn't present as a parent for my daughter. Even during the time I was separated and for a year or so after the divorce, I pretty much always kept to myself and wasn't there for my daughter. But once I stopped drinking and got my life back together, the first thing I did was to reach out to her and apologize. But she refused to listen to me and blocked me everywhere. I thought giving her time would work and she would eventually come around, but here we are 8 years later and our relationship has only gotten worse with time. Now the other big question about my mom's inheritance. Well, technically, the money belonged to my father. My grandparents were both doctors and had brought property all around the city during their careers. Most of it was rented out and ended up bringing a lot of money. Dad passed away when I was 21 and left everything to Mom. All of it remained in her name during my marriage and for a few years after my divorce while her health was still right. After Mom passed away, I received everything as her sole heir. My wife didn't receive anything in the divorce except alimony till she got remarried a few years ago because my mom owned everything at the time. So the way things stand, my daughter never even got close to owning anything. She knew of course that her grandma was a landlady and owned a couple of Airbnbs, but I never touched any of that money because the money I made from my old construction business was more than enough to live comfortably. I hope I've answered all your questions. Also, my daughter hasn't reached out to me after that night and I don't think she will, to be honest. I think she made it pretty clear that she only put up this whole show for the inheritance and now that it's out of question, I don't expect to see her around anymore. I'd be lying if I said I am not at all upset about it, but at this point, I know not to expect too much out of people. No matter who they are. So that's that I guess. Thanks to all of you for sending support. I appreciate it. I also think it's maybe time for me to put myself out there and maybe get back into dating and find companionship instead of expecting ghosts from my past to come around. Update 2. It's been quite a week guys. I thought that would be my last and only update but I guess life had other plans. Anyway. I had just gotten back from work and was considering going out with a couple of buddies when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone but opened the door and there she was. My worst nightmare. She has changed her hair and lost some weight so it took me a couple of seconds to recognize her but it's hard to forget someone you were together with for decades haha. Seeing her was quite a shock, to say the least. I didn't know what to say so I just stood there awkwardly. She then asked me if I had a moment to talk about some stuff. I was hesitant but didn't want her to stand there at my door so I just invited her in. It was really awkward, as you guys can probably imagine. We made small talk about this and that and then she said that she understood that this was a little strange but there were some things she needed to tell me. I asked her to go on and she said that our daughter reached out to her and told her about the inheritance. I think I kinda saw that coming. I mean why else would she need to speak to me after all those years? Anyway, she said that she understood the divorce was really hard on me and that she took things further than she probably should have. I just scoffed at that but she ignored my reaction. She then said that I shouldn't punish my daughter for what happened between the two of us. She said some of the same things my daughter has said, such as her being very young at the time of the divorce and how I can't be resentful towards her for choosing her mother over me. I just stopped her at that point and said that I have no resentment towards anyone anymore and that even if I held on to any anger, it wouldn't be towards our daughter. I told her that I was hurt at the realization that after all those years, she only thought of reaching out to her father because there was a possibility of getting some money out of it. I told her the same thing I told my daughter, that if she had the decency to try and reconnect earlier she would have ended up with the inheritance. My ex tried to put up some sort of defense but I told her that my decision was final and if they're just gonna go around in circles about this one thing then they're wasting everyone's time. I said that I had plans and that if there was nothing else to discuss, she should probably leave. She nodded and apologized for bothering me and I told her there was no need for that and she left. After she left I just sat there in disbelief. I never expected to ever see her again, let alone have a conversation in my home. It was strange and brought up a lot of old memories that I would rather not have thought about ever again. I went out with my friends and tried to forget all about it. So yeah. That happened and I needed to get it off my chest because. Thanks for reading along if you're still here. Update 3, I have another update for you guys. So this afternoon I was at work when I got a call from my daughter. I thought of not picking up but curiosity got the best of me and I picked up. I picked up and straight away told her that if this was about the inheritance then I really don't think there's a point in us having a conversation. She said that there was something else she wanted to talk about. I asked her to go on and she said that she had been thinking a lot about what happened and felt like she owes me an apology. She said that she understood that she should have done things differently and that if I was willing to forgive her and give our relationship another chance then she would be happy to have me at her wedding. I was really taken aback, to say the least. I asked her if she was sure about it and she said yes and that I could take some time to think about it and let her know if I'd be there or not. I said alright and we hung up. I'm really confused now. A part of me is overjoyed at the thought of being at her wedding but I also can't seem to shake the feeling that this is just some way for her to be on my good side and eventually get the inheritance. At the same time if she's actually being genuine I don't want to sabotage my chance at being in her life. If I say no and she never reaches out again, I could hardly blame her. I'd appreciate some advice if anyone would like to help me out. Update 4, I've decided to go to the wedding. Many of you said that going to the wedding couldn't do any harm. I guess that makes sense. It's not like I have to do anything in return for being invited to the wedding. Also, no I'm not in the wedding party. I'd just be a guest. I'm fine with that, as I understand that going from someone she hasn't spoken to in 8 years to someone walking her down the aisle at the wedding is a big leap. I don't think either of us would be comfortable with that. I really do hope this is the start of a new chapter and that we can build something meaningful out of this. Thanks to all of you for listening and all the advice you've given. I appreciate it and hope you guys wish me luck. Mom abandoned me, so I exposed her lies to her rich ex and got the last laugh. I, 16F, have been living with my mom, 38F, since I was 13 and my dad passed away. My parents had never been married, but they'd worked out a living arrangement for me where I'd spend half of the month with my dad and the other with my dad. My dad had never been in any other serious relationship after my mom, and even if he had been, I didn't know about it. But my mother had a new boyfriend every 3 months and it was pretty tiring for me as a kid to get used to it. I'm not shaming her, but I just didn't like it as a child. My dad passed away in an accident 3 years back, and since then I've been living with my mother permanently. Now that she has no child support and has to pay for all the expenses, I finally realize what an unpleasant and horrid woman she really is. She's constantly belittling me and reminding me how much it's costing her to raise me as if it's my fault. She hates me and I know it, so I try to make myself scarce as much as possible, but it's not like I can stop existing just to please her. I've also realized a couple of things about my mom while living with her these past few years. She changes boyfriends frequently and keeps herself looking as young as possible to catfish them into being with her. She pretends she's in her late 20s or early 30s even though she's pushing 40 now. And all of her boyfriends are uber rich young men who are with her just for her looks. It's fair because she's also with them just for their money. Personally, I don't approve of this lifestyle at all, but I can't complain because this is what is easy for her, and realistically, a waitress can't afford the lifestyle that she wishes to lead. All I'm concerned about is that there's food on the table and that my tuition is paid consistently, that's all. So I keep to myself for the most part and have even taken up part-time jobs recently to make sure I don't have to rely on my mother all the time. A few days ago, I made a mistake and my mother kicked me out of her house. The mistake I'd made was also not even a big deal. I accidentally slipped up while her new boyfriend was visiting and told him that I was in my junior year when he asked me which year I was in. Yeah, I'm supposed to tell her boyfriends that I'm still in freshman year so that they don't think of her as old or whatever. That's the level of shallow my mom is. Her boyfriend didn't make a big deal out of it and didn't even seem to care, but after he left, my mom and I got into a huge fight which ended with her kicking me out. Not just kicked me out, but she actually told me that I was never allowed to come back and that I was on my own now. I couldn't even believe that she could be capable of such cruelty, but there it was. Luckily, I did have some friends and I decided to go over to my best friend's place for that one night, but ended up staying at their place. My best friend is my age and she's been my friend since kindergarten, so I knew that I could help her and her family to help me out. I also got all the emotional support I needed from them and was able to continue going to school because of them. I'm always going to be grateful for that. I was sad, but I was also seething about what my mother had done. I'd resented her for years after my dad died, and nothing I ever did was good enough for her. I guess she just wanted to get rid of me somehow, which is why she picked a stupid little fight with me so she'd have an excuse to kick me out. A teen daughter probably ruined her whole young and hot persona, and she was afraid she wouldn't be able to find new boyfriends to live off of once I started looking older. I still have a chubby face which makes it hard to guess my age, but that's not going to last forever, and I'm pretty tall as well, thanks to my dad's genes. She didn't want me around anyway, so my slip-up was just the excuse that she needed to throw me out. Unfortunately for her, I knew something about her that she'd kept trying her very best to hide. Her last boyfriend was the only one who'd lasted more than 5 months, and they seemed to be getting pretty serious. She'd been lying to him about her age as well, but he either didn't realize it or he didn't care, and the guy was head over heels in love with her, even though I could see it. He was pretty nice to me as well, and I so wished I could tell him to make a run for it so he could escape my mother because he seemed like a genuinely good guy. He must have been around 25 or 27, not older than that, and he was seriously loaded, which wasn't a surprise since my mom only went after rich guys. He was the heir to some company, I think. I thought my mom even planned on marrying him, but they broke up very abruptly and I didn't find out the reason until recently when I was going through my mother's messages. We share a laptop, so I often do check out what my mom's been up to. Yes, I'm well aware that that's an invasion of her privacy, but I really don't care. I get bored sometimes and like to remind myself from time to time what a horrible person my mother really is. Luckily, she treats her younger sister like her personal diary and tells her every little detail. They're both the same, vapid gold diggers, so she enjoys it too. So a few weeks ago, I was going through her texts and started reading about why exactly she and her ex had broken up. She mentioned that she'd taken 10 grand from her boyfriend to buy herself a new wardrobe and makeup, but she'd told him that the reason she needed 10 grand was because apparently I'd been in an accident and had to be operated on. She then refused to meet him for several weeks and started avoiding him, saying that she wanted to spend time with me and help me heal. Then, she broke up with him when he started saying that he wanted to see me. She claimed that he was overwhelming her and she needed her space, which is how she got rid of him. These are her words, not mine. I felt furious when I read all of that because her ex was such a good guy and this is how she'd treated him. Not only had she taken a crapload of money from him just to buy herself expensive new clothes and makeup, but she'd also lied to him and hadn't even bothered to give him a proper explanation for the breakup. I felt horrible and had half a mind to go and tell him about it, but I was afraid that my mother would find out somehow and would kick me out, since she's always looking for an excuse to get rid of me. But now that I was out anyway, I didn't have anything to lose. So 2 days ago, I decided to head over to her ex-boyfriend's house after school and spill the beans on what my mother had done. I even had proof, since I'd taken several pictures of her chats back when I'd found out, not knowing that I'd need to use it someday. I knew his address because I'd been to his place twice with my mother, so it wasn't difficult to find him. When he saw me at his door, he looked really confused but let me in nevertheless. I guess he was curious, even though it seemed like he was doing well and had probably moved on. After a bit of small talk, I told him all about what I knew and even showed him the chats. I didn't know what he was going to do about this, but I'd hoped that he'd at least confront my mother. But at the time, he only thanked me for everything in a really quiet voice and said that he'd think about what to do. I was a little disheartened because I thought my mom would get off scot-free once more, and went back home feeling like this was a huge waste of my time and energy. But today, I received several frantic calls from my neighbor, saying that her ex-boyfriend had shown up at her house with the police and she'd just been placed under arrest. I was really shocked because I didn't think that he'd actually do anything, since he seemed like he'd given up. I guess I was wrong. My neighbors told me that my mom had told them to inform me and expected me to come down to the police station and help sort things out, but I'm not really interested in doing that, so I hung up. This is exactly what I wanted, and I don't feel sorry for her in the slightest. Ida for helping my mother's ex-boyfriend get her arrested after she banned me from the house for one mistake. Update 1. My mom had been arrested a few days back and I'm guessing she's out on bail or something. I haven't really checked up on her because, like I said, I really don't care. My aunt, my mom's sister, did make it a point to try and make me feel guilty for the way I'm acting right now, but if anything, it just makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. She sent me several long texts talking about how I'm an ungrateful brat and that my dad would be ashamed of me if he had been alive. That woman didn't even know my dad well. She'd probably met him once or twice in her entire life, so she was just trying to get me all emotional. I think she's also figured out that I must have been the one who sent those screenshots to my mom's ex, because she said that I'd sold out my own mother over something so petty. I don't think literally kicking me to the curb just because I told her new BF my real age is not something petty. I don't know what she's gonna get out of this anyway. I think they should focus on fighting my mom's case, because I'm pretty sure that her ex is going to take her to court, or else he wouldn't have gotten the police involved at all. That's just my guess, but I really do hope that he does and my mom's life is ruined. Yeah, I'm a horrible person for wishing that on my own mother, but I don't think what she'd done to me and the way she's treated me is fair either, so she deserves this. She deserves nothing but hatred. I'm just glad that all her sins are catching up to her and now she'll have to pay for it all. In the literal sense, too. I can't believe that I even let so many things slide just because I needed to live with her. In a way, I'm glad that she decided to kick me out, because my best friend's parents are actually thinking about adopting me. I'm over the moon about this, and so is my best friend. I already pretty much consider her a sister, so this is perfect. I'm just hoping my mother doesn't put up a fight when I have to ask her to sign her parental rights away. Update 2. My mom's out on bail and I guess her ex is indeed suing her. She was waiting for me right outside school today and demanded to speak to me in person. I didn't want her to embarrass me in front of my friends, so I agreed to speak to her. She immediately started saying all the crap that her sister had been saying to me, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish. And then she said that she wanted me to tell her ex that I'd made up that whole story and that those screenshots had been photoshopped by me to get her in trouble. She even suggested that I take some pictures of myself with my arm in a sling so she could convince him that the accident had really happened. I was speechless that she still had the audacity to demand that I lie and cover up for her after she'd ruthlessly kicked me out of her house. She didn't deserve my sympathy in the slightest, and I honestly thought that getting embarrassed at school would have been better than speaking to her. I shouldn't have talked to her at all, but what's done was done, so I decided to be a little sneaky and said that I'd only do as she said if she agreed to let my best friend's parents adopt me and gave up her rights as a parent. Just as I'd thought, she agreed to it without missing a beat and even seemed happy about it. I felt a little upset that she was so thrilled to finally get rid of me, but honestly, I'd seen this coming. I knew this was going to happen someday or the other. I'd always known that my mother hated me, and even before my dad passed away, she'd only wanted me to stay with her so that she could continue taking child support from my dad. I'd always tried to win her approval so that she'd love me, but all she cared about was her boyfriends and her looks. It frustrated me to no end as a kid and still does. She shouldn't have chosen to have me at all if she didn't feel ready to become a mother, which she clearly isn't. She didn't want to be a mom back then, and she still doesn't, which is pretty obvious, as you guys can all conclude from whatever I've shared here. I'm just happy that now at least I'll have a family who's genuinely happy to have me. They've always treated me like one of their own, and I know they'll be thrilled to adopt me. My best friend's dad is one of the best family lawyers I'm aware of as well, so I know the process will be easy and quick too. Update 3. Hey, there. I've been living with my best friend and her family for a while now, and honestly, it feels as if I'm in a movie. I had no idea this was what family was supposed to feel like. The comfort and love they've showered me with is beyond compare. My dad, while he was alive, would always go out of his way to remind me that I was loved every time I came back from my mother's place because I think he could sense that something was off even though I always made sure that I didn't let it show. Back then, I used to think that my mother would love me someday in spite of all the signs that said otherwise, so I wanted to continue visiting her but would be disappointed every single time. And every single time, my dad would try his best to put those broken pieces of me back together and make me feel like myself again. After his death, there was no one who'd do that for me except for my best friend, but we'd only meet at school and sometimes on the weekends. But now, I feel like I've found a new family. One that my father would love for me to be a part of, and I'm going to make sure that it happens. My best friend's dad has already prepared the legal documents, and if all goes well, they'll be able to adopt me soon. I've also been in touch with my mother and have been convincing her that I'll definitely convince her ex to leave her alone, but like I said, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just making sure she signs off on the termination of her parental rights first, and then I'll cut her out of my life forever. My best friend thinks it's a really clever plan and has been reassuring me that it's certainly going to work because I've been worried sick about all of this lately. Like I don't let it show at school, but my anxiety has been off the charts. My best friend wants me to tell her parents so that they can look into therapists and make sure I get the help I need, but I've made her promise that she's not going to breathe a word of this until I'm ready. The reason for that is that I don't want to overburden them. I know I just talked a lot about how they treat me like family, and they do, really. I also know that they won't mind taking me to therapists to get help, but I just don't want to feel guilty about making them run around so much. I know they're all working really hard for me, and I'm feeling both grateful and guilty. I don't know how to deal with this many emotions all at once, and that's why my anxiety has been really bad lately. I'm just praying that this all comes to an end soon. Update 4. So my mother signed the papers and she's no longer legally my parent now. I couldn't be happier about it. She was very pleased to sign it as well, and even tried to act all friendly to my new adoptive parents as well, but they didn't reciprocate and were very curt, so she eventually took the hint. After that was done, she pulled me aside once again and asked me about when I was going to speak to her ex and take it all back. I didn't want to ruin the day, so I told her very soon, and then she left. I'm still sticking to my earlier decision of not telling her ex a thing, and I'm low-key proud of how I dealt with this entire situation. I know it was very sneaky and mean, but I did whatever I had to get away from my mother once and for all. I don't think she even regrets whatever she did. She seemed perfectly at ease today because she knew that she was getting rid of me permanently, and now she was free to live her life the way she wanted to without worrying about me. It still stung, but I knew now that this wasn't my fault. I could have been the best goddamn daughter on this planet and she still wouldn't have wanted me, so I was okay. At least I have people who truly want me by my side now, so I'm not losing out on anything. And I get to live with my best friend permanently. I guess she's my sister now for real, and it still feels so weird. I can't believe I have a whole new family, and even though it's just 2 years until I turn 18, I still want to make the most of it. After we came back home that day, we decided to celebrate with a cake and takeout from my favorite restaurant, which was the perfect end to a perfect day. I can't wait to spend the rest of my days with the family that chose me. Update 5. Hey, guys. I'd thought that the last update would be the last update, but I'm back again because something pretty messed up happened recently. So after my mother had signed the papers, I blocked her everywhere because I didn't want to keep in touch, and I definitely didn't want her to be able to have any access to me. For a couple of days, things were pretty normal and I didn't hear from her. Then out of the blue, I received an email from an email address I didn't recognize that reminded me to stick to my words and stay true to my promises. I knew instantly that it had to be my mother, because who else would do something like this? I ignored it, but then she started texting me and calling me from other numbers as well to convince me. I wanted to tell my parents. Still feels weird to say that, but I'm trying to get used to it. But I was scared because this would also mean that I'd have to explain what I'd promised my mother in exchange for her to sign the papers without much of a fuss. I didn't know how they'd take that, so I decided to keep it to myself. But then, just a few days back, my mother paid me a visit at school. After school, my best friend and I were supposed to walk home, but I saw her waiting right outside and she looked pissed. I didn't know what to do then and ended up having an anxiety attack right there. My mother's reappearance meant bad news, and I didn't want to deal with that just now. I couldn't think of what to do, and I was especially scared of disappointing my new family with my sly little stunt, so I ran back inside the school building while my best friend chased after me. I locked myself in the janitor's closet and refused to come out, and I think I must have accidentally passed out because of sheer panic, because the next thing I remember is being carried out of the closet by my best friend's dad while she, her mom, and the principal looked on. By the time I got home, it was dark and I was told to go to sleep. They didn't sound mad, but they didn't sound happy either, so I was really nervous, but I did manage to fall asleep after a while because I was mentally exhausted. The next day, after I woke up and had breakfast, my family sat me down and told me that my best friend had told them everything, and they reassured me that they weren't mad at me but were concerned. I was actually kind of relieved that it was all out in the open now, because I was tired of keeping secrets. Thank goodness my best friend decided that my well-being was more important than keeping our secrets and decided to spill, because, after that, we decided to file for a restraining order against my mother. They told me that they didn't think it was wrong of me at all to try and manipulate my mother into getting my way. In fact, they even thought that it was kind of clever since I'd just beat her at her own game and she couldn't do anything about it now. So I was happy that they weren't disappointed by what I'd done. Anyway, we filed for a restraining order against my mother and hopefully, I'll be able to get the longer one because I don't want her around me ever again. She's always had bad vibes and will continue to be that way. I've had enough of her. We're also looking into therapists around us because I have a lot of emotions to deal with, given my past. And I'm happy that I'm finally getting the help that I need. I'll always be grateful to my best friend and my new family for reminding me what love and family mean once more, and I bet my dad would love this for me, too. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Ex abandoned our newborn daughter and disappeared. After 3 years she wants back in my life. My ex-girlfriend, 26F, and I, 27M, first got together 6 years ago, and from day one, we got on like two peas in a pod. Then after 2.5 years together, she fell pregnant. We had spoken about kids before and we both wanted a family, but not after just 2 years together. We spoke about it a lot, asked a few of our friends that already have kids, and eventually decided to go for it. We also agreed that even if our relationship doesn't last, our child's well-being would always come first. Right before the lockdown in 2020, 3 weeks before the due date, we welcomed a perfect little girl and both of us were completely infatuated. It was a big adjustment, but our girl was an angel and we settled into parenthood rather quickly. Everything was going great at first, but 3 months later, it all changed. I was working late when I got a text from my mother to tell me my girlfriend dropped our daughter off with her while she ran some errands, but 4 hours later, she hadn't returned and now she wasn't answering her phone. I called too, but she didn't answer me either. I got out of work, collected my daughter and went home to find a note from my girlfriend. She said that she couldn't handle the stress of lockdown and the baby and she just needed some time to clear her head. She also said not to call and that we would talk soon, but days turned to weeks with no contact from her or anyone else other than her sister, who visited her niece often but never mentioned my girlfriend. Fast forward 3 years and my ex-girlfriend is slowly starting to reach out again. It was slow at first, liking photos of our girl on Instagram and the odd comment, but that was it until last week. She sent me a text saying that she had seen how well our daughter and I are doing and asking if we could meet up. I was reluctant, but we agreed before our daughter was born that her well-being is what mattered the most, so reluctantly, I agreed to meet for a coffee so she can see our girl, but I'm having second thoughts. How do I forgive her for walking out on me and, more importantly, on our daughter? Update 1. As agreed, my ex and I met up a few days ago in a local cafe and I got there early to try and work out what I was going to say to her after 3 years. While I hadn't mentioned it in my original post, I had no intention of bringing our daughter along. My ex had contact numbers of my family members, so she was with a coworker, and when my ex arrived, she was a little disappointed but not all that surprised to see I was alone. The next few minutes mainly consisted of small talk before we eventually addressed the enormous elephant in the room. Where she had been hiding for 3 years of our daughter's life. She admitted that she'd had suffered a lot with postpartum depression and she couldn't bear to show it in front of our girl. She acknowledged that leaving the way she did was wrong, but she wanted to be able to focus solely on herself while she got therapy. I asked why it took her 3 years to resurface. She sent a text for our daughter's first birthday, but that was it, and she broke down admitting that she was so scared of what I thought of her for disappearing. In a way she was right to be scared, because while I could come to terms with being dumped, I was furious because she left our daughter. Throughout our conversation, I could tell she's grown a lot as a person over the last few years, which is something. We spoke for well over an hour, and when I finally got up to leave, she asked where we stood. I told her that I appreciate that she's been really trying to turn over a new leaf, but it's going to take time for me to fully move on, but as a show of good faith, I showed her a video of our girl. It's about 6/7 months old, but it's my favorite. It's her and one of my dad's cows mooing at each other. Just before I left, I got her phone number so we can maintain a bit of proper contact rather than through social media, and I agreed to send her a couple of photos of our girl. I appreciate all the advice I got last time, and I'm wondering where my ex and I go from here? My hope is that we can coexist and maintain a healthy friendship for our daughter's sake, but after what happened before, it's hard to fully trust my ex. What do you guys think? Side note, 2 things I didn't mention to my ex. 1. I have zero intentions of rekindling our relationship. I'm open to co-parenting if she can prove she's not going to pull another disappearing act, but that's it. I really loved her once, but I'm a different person now and that ship has well and truly sailed. 2. At one point, I considered putting our girl up for adoption. She was about 9 months at the time. I was mentally and emotionally drained, work was stressing me out, and coming home to my daughter just didn't give me any joy as much as I love her. I was going through the process, but one night, I looked in at her in her cot, she looked back at me, and the look on her little face. A cute little smile and her blue eyes shining like I was her whole world. It told me that things would get better, so I canceled the adoption and never looked back. Update 2. It's been a few weeks, so I thought I'd give another update regarding progress with my ex. First off, thanks to everyone for the advice and support. It's been such a huge help. So, down to business. Per my ex's request, I accompanied her to a session with her therapist, and she reassured me that she and my ex have made good progress, but she still has some issues to work through. Specify, her relationship with her parents. She told me they separated and her mother had a temper, but I didn't know how bad it really was. After the session, my ex left and I hung on for a minute to ask her therapist for her opinion regarding reintroducing my daughter to my ex. She recommended holding off for now and offered me a free session to talk about it, so I'm going to see her next week. On a more positive note, my daughter started preschool 2 weeks ago, is already making friends and has been absolutely loving life. And I sent my ex a few photos of our girl to show some support, so things are looking up. Thanks again to everyone that has commented so far. The support I got has been incredible. Makes the struggle of raising a child alone a little better. Joked about calling off my wedding. But my brother confessed his love for my fiancée while leaving his pregnant wife, and convincing our family to disown us. So I think I accidentally broke my family apart. Let me explain. I 26M got engaged to my beautiful fiancée Olivia 25F 6 months ago. Olivia and I grew up together in the same neighborhood. We went to the same kindergarten and were basically inseparable till high school. We started dating when we were 18 and 17. We were in a long-distance relationship for 4 years when we were both in college, but the moment I graduated, I moved to her city to be with her and started my own business. I had enough of being apart from her during our long-distance phase, and also the timing couldn't be better. We lived together for a year while she finished nursing school and I was working hard to build my business. It took a lot of hard work, but well, business had been good and Olivia just finished nursing school last year and started working as a pediatric nurse. At that time it had been a year of us living together. I finally did what I had always dreamed of doing and proposed to her. Lucky for me, she said yes. Although we got engaged almost 2 years ago, we decided to first save up enough to buy a place of our own before spending money on a wedding because neither of us cared much about a big wedding. Everything was just perfect. It was exactly how I pictured things would be when I was young. We are both making good money and we're hoping that we could get married next year and maybe even start our own family. So yeah, things were going great. I never really thought a joke of all things could potentially ruin my life and turn my family upside down. But that's exactly what happened last week when I made a stupid remark at the family dinner. It was supposed to be a happy occasion. My parents had invited me and Olivia to celebrate their anniversary. They also invited my younger sister Kate, my older brother, Jake, and his wife Rachel. Jake and Rachel have been married for just around a year and a half and are expecting their first kid. I'm saying this now because it is important for you guys to know this before I get into what actually happened. We were all sitting around the table, enjoying the food and the wine, when my dad jokingly asked me and Rachel if we ever planned on getting married or was a permanent engagement of sorts. Before anyone comes at him saying he was being rude, I just want to clarify that my dad is a huge goofball. He has known Olivia since her childhood and already sees her as a daughter-in-law. He knew well enough that there was no question of us not getting married. He was just teasing us as dads do. I laughed, shrugged, and said something like, "Oh, you know, it's a lot of work, wonder if it's worth it, maybe we should just call it off and save ourselves the trouble." I meant it as a joke. A harmless joke. I love Olivia more than anything, and I couldn't wait to marry her. I was just trying to lighten the mood, to make everyone laugh. I was also sort of drunk and didn't realize at all that what I said could upset my fiancée. She's usually a very good sport and jokes around with me. But I don't know, it must have come across as mean and she burst into tears. I was horrified. I apologized immediately and told her that I was joking and didn't mean anything and that I couldn't wait to marry her, which is completely true. But she was very upset and ran out to the bathroom. I followed her but she wouldn't open the door. I had to come back to the dinner table and everyone was just horrified. No one finished their dinner. My mom and sister spoke to Olivia and told me she would like some time alone and would be staying over for the night. They said that I should leave and give her some space. I apologized to her again and left feeling really awful about what I just did. My fiancée is the love of my life and hurting her is the last thing I would ever do. I came home and sent her a long text apologizing for what I said and assuring her that I would never say anything like that ever again. I had complete faith in our relationship and knew that although it might take some time, we would get through this and she would forgive me. I went to bed hoping to hear from her in the morning. To say that I could not have imagined how things would actually turn out to be like would be a huge understatement. It was quite late by the time I slept that night and so I also woke up late. I tried to check my phone to see if Olivia texted but saw that it was dead. Of course, I forgot to plug it in before I slept at night. I panicked wondering if I had missed any calls or texts from Olivia while my phone was dead, and the moment I plugged it in I saw that there were dozens of missed calls and texts, not just from Olivia but also from my mom, my dad, my sister, and even my sil. I was terrified. I immediately called Olivia but she didn't pick up, so I called my mom. The moment she picked up she was practically screaming at me asking where on earth I was, and everyone has been trying to reach me for ages. I tried to explain that I had just forgotten to plug my phone in, but she just told me to not waste any more time and to drive home immediately. I drove faster than I probably ever did and kept calling Olivia on the way but she didn't pick up. This just made my anxiety worse and I kept thinking of the worst case scenarios. Easily the most stressful 15 minutes of my life. I reached home and as soon as I pulled over I could hear screaming. You can imagine the effect that had on me. I ran home and made my way to the kitchen because that's where all the commotion was coming from. The whole family was there. Olivia was looking extremely upset and my mom was screaming at everyone. My sister was the first one to see me and announced it to everyone. When my mom and Olivia saw me, all hell broke down. My mom started screaming at me saying that my stupidity had destroyed this family forever. I was so confused I asked my sister what was going on. She said that I would be better off asking my fiancé. My mom referring to Olivia as my fiancé was odd in itself. She has always been close and affectionate with her and called her Livy. I turned to Olivia and asked her to please tell me what was going on. She said that we should talk in private. My mother had stormed out of the kitchen by then. So Olivia and I went to my bedroom to talk. I was beyond stressed at this point and begged her to tell me what happened. She said that I should just calm down and hear her out. It was too late to calm down at that point. I told her that I was fine and to just tell me what was going on. She took a breath and told me that early in the morning today she heard someone knock on her door and when she opened it she saw my brother standing there. She was a bit surprised and asked him what's up and he said he had to talk about something important. She asked what and he said it would be better if they could talk in private. She agreed and they decided to take a walk together. Now this is where things went wrong. They had just walked around the corner of our block and my brother asked her how she was feeling after all that happened last night. She said that she was fine and that she just had an outburst and had already tried calling me to talk but my phone was off. She said that she was planning to go back home to me after breakfast. My brother looked at her for a bit and then started saying stuff like how he had seen us. By us he meant me and Olivia, for years and always thought that I wasn't kind to her and that she deserves someone who respects her and values her time. Olivia got a little uncomfortable and tried to defend me saying how I am just goofy at times and joke around but I love her and would never try to hurt her. My brother interrupted her at that and said that she didn't have to pretend anymore and that she should raise her standards and be with someone better instead of settling for me. She was confused and weirded out and asked him why he was saying all that. He told her that there was no easy way of saying this but he had been in love with her for years and always hoped that she and I would break up so he could ask her out and only settled for his wife because we got engaged. Olivia was shocked. She told me that she initially thought that he was joking and laughed, asking him to stop messing around and even asking him if I had set this whole thing up to tease her. When it became clear that this wasn't a joke and that he was being genuine, she was horrified and was watching them from some hidden spot. He told her that he hoped she would think about it and give an answer to him because he wanted to marry her and would never make her wait so long with a ring like I had. He said he had left my sil and would give her anything she wanted. He even went far enough to tell her that if she wanted to they could elope and start their new life together away from all of us. As expected, she was horrified and told him off, saying he was a monster for doing this to his pregnant wife and that she was disgusted with him. She stormed off and came back to the house. She wanted to quickly say bye to the family and come back to our place. She didn't want to tell anyone in my family about this. But it was already too late for that. Guess who she saw in the house when she was back? My sil. She was sobbing to my mother and sister and when she saw Olivia, she got so angry and literally lunged at her and had to be held back by my sister. Pretty dramatic, as you can imagine. Apparently, when she woke up that morning, she saw that my brother wasn't there and after looking for him around their apartment she found a note on their bedside table. The note was from him and he had written that he was sorry but he couldn't live a lie anymore and had to leave because this could be his only chance to be with Olivia before it was too late. She checked and apparently, he had taken his clothes and some other stuff from the apartment as well. The poor girl was obviously devastated and tried reaching out but realized that he had blocked her. So she decided to check if he was at my mom's place and just after she reached, she saw Olivia and just went livid. There was a lot of screaming and a lot of name-calling involved. Olivia was called a homewrecker among other things. My mom was incredibly embarrassed and took it out on Olivia and me. My dad tried to calm things down but my mom just told him to not interfere. They all tried to reach me but of course, as luck would have it I was unavailable. My sil left our house saying that she would never forgive this family because it is because of us that she has to be a single mom now. By that time I had spoken to my mom and was already on my way. Apparently, they had tried to call my brother as well but he was not getting back to anyone. So that's what happened. I honestly was too much in shock to even process all this. For a while, I just stared at her. I don't think I have still processed it honestly. Olivia said that she had tried to explain that she had no clue about all this and this was the first time my brother had said all this. I know for a fact that's true. I can't believe that he had apparently been feeling these things for so long. I know for a fact that's true. I was disappointed and angry at my brother of course but I was even angrier at my mom and sister for trying to make Olivia for what happened. I mean I can maybe understand my sil being unreasonable and blaming her, but it's unfair for everyone to just team up against her when she has done literally nothing wrong and was already feeling bad about the whole thing. I apologized to her for everything she had to hear and for not reaching home sooner. I then told her to go out and wait in the car while I spoke to my mom and my sister. While she was out waiting I tried talking to my mom and sister. My mom was still being incredibly unreasonable and told me that this whole thing could have been avoided if I had just controlled my words and not said that whole thing about calling off the wedding. I can't believe how stupid that is. Anyone with functioning brain cells would understand that I was making a joke. And even if I shouldn't have said that, I don't understand how no one was blaming my brother because no matter what I said or did, he was the one who ruined everything by doing what he did. I told my mom that she has to apologize to Olivia because none of this is her fault and she deserves to be treated with respect. This just made my mom angry and she told me that she would never say a single kind word to her for luring her son and being a homewrecker. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and told my mom to take back what she said. My sister said that there was no way that my brother did this out of the blue and that Olivia must have hinted to him that she wasn't happy with me because why else would he be bold enough to leave my Sil? My mom said that Olivia and I had ruined this family and her chance of being a grandma because my Sil said that she would never let anyone from this family get near her or her future kid ever. I tried to defend myself again and make them see logic, but they just told me to get out and never step foot in this house ever again. I was also incredibly angry at their stupidity and decided to leave. I drove home with Olivia. The two of us are still very upset and don't know what to do. I've been questioning myself and all the things my mom and sister said have been repeating in my head and I don't even know what to believe anymore. I'm just my mom and sis will get back to their senses and see that they're blaming the only innocent person in this scenario. I have tried to reach out to them but my dad let me know that none of them wished to speak to me or Olivia anymore. Ida for making a joke? Update 1. I just want to say that I'm really grateful to those of you who support me and think that I did nothing wrong that night at the dinner party. Some of you have also asked questions about why Olivia reacted the way she did after my joke. I didn't want to get into this because that is quite personal, but I've asked Olivia if she was comfortable with this being on Reddit and she agreed. Also, yes, she has forgiven me for my joke. I told her that I know I was a giant douchebag and that I would never say anything like that ever again. Our relationship is as strong as always and I know we can get through this difficult time together. So here's the thing. Even though Olivia and I had discussed that we would stay engaged for a while and focus on bigger goals such as buying our house before getting married, she was actually starting to get a little insecure about it. Apparently, she had overheard a few of her coworkers gossiping about her and her permanent engagement at work a couple of months ago and it had made her really upset. She tried to be reasonable and didn't tell me because she knew I would just tell her that we should get married immediately, but in her head, she knew that waiting was the more financially responsible decision. Also, she had full faith in our relationship. But it was still something she was struggling with. I guess my timing was just wrong. She was already a little on edge when my dad made the joke about this being an eternal engagement but managed to keep her composure. I guess when I said something similar, it was adding insult to injury. She felt embarrassed and hurt and it just brought her back to the day she heard her coworkers gossiping. I had no clue about all this. I honestly feel like I haven't been a very good partner to her for not noticing that she was upset. We talked about it and decided that we'll actually have a small ceremony sometime within the next 6 months so she never has any anxiety about it. For the past 2 years, we have been talking about having a nice beach wedding once we have our house, but I think it is more important for our relationship to just have a ceremony. With everything that has been going on in the family, planning a wedding sounds extremely draining, but as long as I have her with me, I think I'll be fine. Also, to those of you asking why she stayed at my mom's place instead of going back to the apartment and making me stay home. Guys, my family and I have known this girl for practically her whole life. She has spent countless hours in that house and my childhood bedroom is practically her spot. She loves my family. Honestly, before that day, if anyone told me that my own mom and sister would turn against her and be so awful to her, I never would have believed them. This whole situation is extremely disappointing and has attacked literally everything I believe in. I'm concerned about my relationship, my family is not speaking to me and I'm honestly still in the middle of processing what my brother did. Speaking of my brother, he hasn't been in contact with Olivia since that day. He is also obviously dodging my calls. I don't know where he is. I tried to talk to my family about him but again, no one was willing to speak to me. My dad is trying to stay neutral but doesn't want to make my mom upset. Apparently, she is hysterical about the possibility of not being in her first grandchild's life. My dad also told me that they tried reaching out to my Sil but she made it clear that she was not interested in speaking to any of them. You could have given me a million years to guess, but I never could have guessed that my brother had a thing for Olivia. He is 4 years older than me. The three of us played together as kids. And like I have already said, Olivia and I have been very close literally forever, although we only started dating when I was in my senior year of high school. My brother has always been popular with girls and has had lots of girlfriends over the years, both serious and casual relationships. If he wanted, he could have asked her out before I did, but he didn't. I don't think I have mentioned this before, but Olivia and I took a break of almost a year during our long-distance phase before getting back together. He knew about that and never made a move on her, not even close. So honestly, it is beyond me how he just pulled this stunt out of the blue. I feel absolutely awful about what he did to my Sil. Both Olivia and I tried reaching out to her to explain our side of the story, but she absolutely refused to talk to us. So after trying for a few days, we just decided to respect her choice and not approach her anymore. I honestly don't know what to do about this situation anymore. I still believe that my fiancée deserves an apology from my family for everything she had to hear from them, and I will absolutely make sure she gets one. But for now, we have both agreed that it would be better to let things cool off for a bit before starting another fight. Update 2. Hello everyone, sorry for the super late update, but honestly things have been incredibly stressful in my family and I was not in the mental space to update the post. Again, I'm sorry to keep you guys waiting, and appreciate your patience as I share more details about what has been happening in my crazy life. I can't believe I'm writing this, but my brother has returned to his wife. It has been a few weeks since the whole mess started and apparently, he turned up at his house last night and begged my Sil to give him another chance. He said that he wasn't thinking straight and that it was all Olivia's fault. He had the audacity to say that she had been giving him hints for years and that night it just got to his head and he took that decision without thinking. I don't know how anyone can believe this joke of a lie, but apparently, my Sil did. She decided to forgive him. But that's not even the craziest part. The real reason why I am writing this update is because of my family's reaction to the news. Apparently, my Sil didn't want to be a part of the family anymore and wanted my brother to move out to another state and raise their kid away from my family. My brother tried to convince her to change her mind and she agreed. But she had a condition. She said that she never wanted to see me or my fiancé ever again and that she would only allow my parents and sister to be a part of the baby's life if they all cut me and Olivia out of the family forever. In her opinion, it was fair for her not to want to face the people who caused her so much pain. My brother broke the news to my family and I am genuinely upset to say that they chose him and their future grandkid over me. My mom and sister aren't even speaking to me. It was my dad who drove over to my place to break the news. I tried to defend Olivia and but my dad just told me to let it be and not to make matters worse than they already are. The disappointment I feel towards my whole family cannot possibly be described in words. This was just a few days after my last update. It has been a couple of weeks since then. Olivia and I have been going through a rough patch. Despite my best efforts to reassure her that none of this was her fault, she still feels guilty about me being cut off from my family. Honestly, I could not care less about that at this point. More than anything, I am angry at them for being such cowards and proudly choosing the worst possible stance on this. I've tried to put all of this behind me but I just can't seem to do it. I've been trying to think of ways to get back at them despite Olivia telling me that I should move on. Let's see, maybe I will come up with something. At the very least I want to teach my brother a lesson. Update 3, I've got an interesting update for you guys. As I have already mentioned in my last update, Olivia and I have been really upset about how my family is trying to deal with this whole incident. It is clear that my brother only returned because he realized that Olivia would never even think of being with him and he had nowhere else to go. We don't blame my Sil, of course. It must be daunting to even think of being a single mom. But we also know that it isn't fair to her at all. So amidst all this turmoil in the family, Olivia and I made up a daring plan to expose my brother's true nature. It was a risky move, but one we were willing to undertake for everyone's best interest. I had no doubt that my brother was the same person who didn't hesitate to leave his pregnant wife for his own brother's fiancée. It was impossible that he had a sudden change of heart. And well, if he truly did regret what he did and was a better man now, he would just prove it. So the plan revolved around Olivia feigning interest in my brother, luring him into a trap, and finally exposing him in front of everyone the way he deserves to be. The biggest risk was of course that my brother would see this coming and tell his wife and my family that it was really Olivia who made him act this way and lied about everything, but well, no one was on our side anyway. So we had nothing to lose and everything to gain. We were really nervous. But Olivia was determined to see it through. The plan was that she would show up at my brother's workplace during lunch hour, tell him that she had made a terrible mistake, and bring him to a restaurant to talk about their future. My part in this whale plan was to make sure my Sil was also there in the restaurant waiting to catch him in the act. I knew that even though it was almost guaranteed that my brother would follow Olivia to the restaurant, I would have a hard time making my Sil even hear me out. But well, we had to give it a shot. We went the whole 9 yards too. Olivia took off her engagement ring to be fully convincing. As expected, my brother folded instantly. All it did was show up and fake some tears and sincerity. She told my brother that she was just scared to admit the truth and had finally gotten the courage to leave him, showing him that she was not wearing her engagement ring. Any doubts, he had disappeared after that. Surprisingly, I also did not have a hard time convincing my Sil to come with me. I think that in her heart the poor girl knew the truth the whole time. We waited at the restaurant and sure enough, Olivia came in with my brother. The aftermath was spectacular. My Sil confronted him in public, screamed, and threw a drink at him. My brother looked like he was living his worst nightmare, which was probably this exact scenario. He got super angry at Olivia and started shouting at her, but that's when I stepped in. I had enough of this guy disrespecting her. Nothing a solid punch can't fix, I would say. I walked out with my Sil and Olivia and we drove straight to my mother's house. We told her everything and after a few moments of disbelief, my mom broke down and apologized to Olivia and me for everything she had said in the past. My sister did the same and I'm so grateful to say that I have got my family back. In the aftermath of all this, my brother is left to face the consequences of his actions. We have made it clear to both him and my Sil that he is not welcome in this family anymore, but she and her future child will always be family. My Sil is a wonderful woman and she deserves to be with someone who cherishes her. I know for a fact that she will find that someone. Olivia and I have assured her that we will be there for her and my future niece or nephew and try our best to make sure she never feels alone or overwhelmed. She is still pretty shaken. To be honest, we all are, but I am sure we will all be better with time. Sister scheduled a fake anniversary party on my wedding day and my parents chose to attend it until my grandfather threatened to cut them out of his will. My sister, 28F, and I, 26F, have always had a strained relationship. Our parents have consistently favored her since we were kids. She got the bigger bedroom, newer clothes, and more attention at every milestone. I learned to live with it, focusing on building my own life instead of competing for their approval. My fiancé proposed last January, and we set our wedding date for June 15th this year. We sent save the dates in August and formal invitations in February. Everyone in the family RSVP'd, including my parents and sister. We put down non-refundable deposits for the venue, catering, photographer, DJ, and flowers. Everything was set. Last month, out of nowhere, my sister announced she was planning a second anniversary party on June 15th. I was confused since her wedding anniversary is in August. When I called to ask about the conflict with my wedding date, I expected an apology for the mix-up. Instead, she snapped at me saying, "Well, it's not like it's a big deal. You can just move your date." I was stunned. I calmly explained that we had already paid thousands in deposits and sent invitations months ago. All our vendors were booked, and changing the date would mean losing all that money, not to mention the chaos of trying to reschedule everything with just weeks to go. She responded by hanging up on me. I thought surely my parents would see how ridiculous this was, so I called them expecting support. Instead, my mom immediately sided with my sister, saying, "It's just one day for you, but this is an important milestone for Olivia." When I pointed out it wasn't even her real anniversary date, my dad jumped in and said my sister's celebrations take priority because she puts effort into maintaining relationships, implying I don't. The conversation got worse from there. They confirmed they were planning to attend her fake anniversary party instead of my wedding. My dad said he had already told Olivia they would be there, and it would be unfair to change plans now, completely ignoring that they had RSVP'd to my wedding months ago. I hung up the phone in tears and couldn't believe what was happening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how my own parents were choosing to skip my wedding for a party that didn't even need to happen on that specific day. My fiancé suggested I talk to someone else in the family who might be able to reason with them. I called my grandpa Earl, 75M, the next morning. He's always been supportive of me, even while dealing with his own health issues. He had a heart attack last year and has been careful about travel, but had already confirmed he would attend our wedding despite it being a 3-hour drive from his home. When I told Grandpa Earl what happened, he was furious. He couldn't understand why my sister would schedule her party on my wedding day or why my parents would choose to attend it instead. He promised he would be at my wedding no matter what and said he would talk to my parents about their decision. During our conversation, he mentioned something I never knew. He had accumulated significant wealth over the years from smart investments and property holdings. He told me he was planning to leave substantial inheritances to my parents, sister and me. He was so disgusted by their behavior that he said he might reconsider his will. I told him that wasn't necessary and that I was just grateful for his support. 4 days after my conversation with Grandpa Earl, I received a call from my mother. Her tone was completely different from our previous conversation. She said they had reconsidered and would be attending my wedding after all. She made it sound like they were doing me a huge favor, saying, family should stick together for important events. There was no apology for their previous decision or acknowledgement of how hurtful it had been. Later that same day, my sister called to say she was postponing her anniversary party. She claimed it was because some friends couldn't make it, not because it conflicted with my wedding. Again, no apology, no admission that scheduling a fake anniversary party on my wedding day was inappropriate. Neither of them mentioned anything about Grandpa Earl or any inheritance. Something felt off about their sudden change of heart. The next time I spoke with Grandpa Earl, I asked if he had said anything to them. He admitted he had called my father and mentioned he was reconsidering his will after hearing how they treated me. That's when everything clicked. They only changed their minds about attending my wedding because they were worried about losing their inheritance, not because they actually cared about me or realized they were wrong. I was beyond hurt. I spent the night talking it over with my fiancé, who was equally disgusted by their behavior. The next morning, I called my parents and told them not to bother coming to the wedding since I knew their sudden change of heart was only about money. My dad immediately accused me of being dramatic, while my mom started crying. She claimed I was misinterpreting their intentions and that they always planned to attend my wedding, despite explicitly telling me otherwise just days earlier. My sister sent me a text saying, "You've always been jealous of me. Stop being such a worthless burden to everyone who has to deal with your pathetic insecurities." This was the final straw. I blocked her number immediately. Within hours, extended family members started messaging me. It became clear that my parents were telling everyone I'd banned them from my wedding out of spite and jealousy without explaining the full story. My fiancé supports whatever decision I make, but with all the family pressure, I'm starting to doubt myself. Part of me wants to just let them come to avoid more drama, but another part feels like I'd be letting them walk all over me again. They've shown they only care about the money, not about being there for me on one of the most important days of my life. Ida for refusing to let my family attend my wedding after finding out they only changed their minds because of potential inheritance issues? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my original post, and I want to thank everyone for their comments and support. I need to address some misunderstandings I've seen in the comments. No, I don't want my grandfather's money. I never even knew he had significant savings until this situation happened. I have a good job and my fiancé also has a better job. We're financially stable on our own. For those asking why my sister would deliberately schedule her party on my wedding day, honestly, this kind of thing has happened before. She scheduled her college graduation party on my birthday, planned a family trip during my high school graduation week, and announced her engagement at my engagement party. My parents always made excuses for her behavior, saying she was excited or didn't realize the conflict, but this wedding situation was the most blatant example yet. After posting here, the situation got even worse. My family bombarded me with messages and calls. My mother called crying every day, sometimes multiple times. She would start the conversation normally, then break down sobbing about how I was breaking her heart. These calls would last for hours if I didn't find an excuse to hang up. My sister sent increasingly hostile texts. I was shocked at how nasty she was being and couldn't understand why she was so angry when she was the one who tried to sabotage my wedding. Even my future mother-in-law, who had previously stayed out of family drama, received calls from my mother trying to get her to talk some sense into me. Thankfully, my fiancé's family has been incredibly supportive and didn't pressure me either way. The stress was taking a physical toll. I wasn't sleeping, couldn't focus at work, and started having anxiety attacks whenever my phone rang. My boss noticed my performance slipping and called me into his office to ask if everything was okay. I had to explain that I was dealing with family issues related to my upcoming wedding. He was sympathetic but reminded me that I needed to keep up with my workload. After a particularly bad night where I couldn't sleep at all, my fiancé found me crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m. He suggested that maybe letting them attend the wedding would at least stop the harassment, and we could keep our distance from them during the event. As much as I hated to admit it, he had a point. The wedding was less than a week away, and I couldn't handle the stress anymore. So, against my better judgment, I called my parents the next day and told them they could attend the wedding. I made it clear that this didn't mean I was okay with how they had treated me, but that I wanted the harassment to stop and was hoping we could at least keep things civil for one day. When I called to tell them, my mother immediately stopped crying and said, "Well, I'm glad you finally came to your senses." My father simply said, "Good. That's what families do." My sister didn't even bother to respond to my text letting her know she could attend. It was like they felt entitled to be there all along, despite initially choosing to skip it. I spent the days leading up to the wedding focusing on last-minute details and trying to prepare myself mentally for seeing my family. My bridesmaids, who knew the situation, promised to run interference if things got tense. My maid of honor even created a signal we could use if I needed rescue from a conversation with my family. On the wedding day itself, I woke up with a mixture of excitement about marrying the love of my life and dread about facing my family. My bridesmaids arrived early to help with hair and makeup, bringing champagne and breakfast to start the day on a positive note. They kept me laughing and distracted as we got ready. My mother arrived at the bridal suite just as we were finishing makeup. She immediately started criticizing the hairstylist's work and suggested I should have chosen a different style. My maid of honor smoothly intervened, saying the photographer wanted to take some pre-ceremony shots of just me and the bridesmaids, effectively ushering my mother out of the room. The ceremony itself was beautiful despite the tension. I focused on my fiancé's face as I walked down the aisle, barely registering my father beside me. We had decided to have him walk me down the aisle to avoid creating more drama, but we didn't include the traditional "who gives this woman" part in the ceremony. Grandpa Earl sat in the front row, having insisted on coming despite his doctor strongly advising against travel due to his heart condition. Seeing him there, smiling proudly, helped me get through the ceremony without thinking about my parents' and sister's true motivations for attending. At the reception, I couldn't help but notice my parents and sister hovering around Grandpa Earl whenever he was alone. They kept bringing him drinks, showing him photos on their phones, and being uncharacteristically attentive while barely acknowledging me except when other guests were watching. It was so obvious what they were doing that several guests commented on it to me later. My father made a brief toast that focused more on family unity and forgiveness than on celebrating our marriage. It felt like a public relations move rather than a genuine expression of happiness for us. My sister sat at her table looking bored and checking her phone throughout the speeches. I spent the evening focusing on my new husband, our friends, and Grandpa Earl. Whenever possible, I sat with my grandfather, who told stories about his youth and gave marriage advice that made us laugh and tear up. Those moments were the highlight of my reception. He stayed longer than expected despite his health concerns, saying he wouldn't miss celebrating with his favorite granddaughter for anything in the world. We left for our honeymoon the next day, a 2-week trip to Hawaii that we had been planning and saving for since our engagement. Being away from all the family drama was exactly what we needed. A week after returning from our honeymoon, my mother called to check in. After brief small talk about the wedding and honeymoon, she got to the real reason for her call. Your grandfather seemed a bit cold toward us at the wedding. I was wondering if you could talk to him. Put in a good word for us. I decided to be direct. Are you asking me to convince Grandpa Earl not to cut you out of his will? She paused before saying, well, we did come to your wedding like you wanted. I think you owe us that much. I reminded her they only attended to protect their inheritance after initially choosing my sister's fake anniversary party. I told her I wasn't going to help them manipulate my grandfather. She hung up without responding. My father called next, immediately aggressive. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your grandfather against us? When I pointed out their lifelong favoritism of my sister, he exploded and cut the call. My sister's text was simple: you're a selfish bitch. If we lose our inheritance because of you, you'll regret it. I blocked all their numbers after that. I had unblocked my sister few days before the wedding. My husband has been incredibly supportive, reminding me that I don't owe them anything after how they've treated me. We agreed to take some time to process everything before deciding on next steps regarding my family. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update. Several commenters asked why I hadn't cut contact with my family sooner. The truth is I kept hoping things would improve, that they'd realize how they were treating me. It's harder to let go of family than you might think, even when they consistently hurt you. There were good moments mixed in with the bad over the years, and those memories made it difficult to make a clean break. After blocking their numbers, my family found other ways to contact me. My mother started emailing me daily, alternating between guilt trips and angry accusations. My father called my workplace 3 times before my boss told the receptionist not to put his calls through anymore. He showed up at our apartment one evening when we were out, leaving a note demanding I call him about important family business. My sister took to social media, posting vague but obvious references to me being ungrateful and manipulative. She even reached out to mutual friends, telling them I was having mental health issues and needed intervention. Thankfully, these friends knew me well enough to check with me directly rather than believing her. They started calling my husband when they couldn't reach me. At first, he tried to be polite, saying I needed space and would contact them when I was ready. Eventually, he had to block their numbers too after my father called him at work and my sister sent him threatening texts. They even contacted my friends from college and high school, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. These friends forwarded me confused messages asking what was going on and if I was okay. It was embarrassing having to explain the situation to people who weren't close to me anymore. My parents showed up at our apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. We were home but didn't answer the door. They stood in the hallway knocking for nearly 20 minutes before leaving. Our neighbors later asked if everything was okay, saying they'd overheard my parents claiming they were worried about my mental state and might need to call the police for a wellness check. They suddenly seemed desperate to talk to me, ironic given how little they cared about my wedding initially. Their behavior only confirmed I had made the right decision in cutting contact. During this time, Grandpa Earl called to check on me. We had a long talk about everything that had happened. He told me something that shed more light on the situation. My parents and sister had arranged a meeting with him after the wedding. He thought they were going to apologize for their behavior, but instead, they spent the entire hour asking about his will and financial planning. They didn't even try to hide what they were after, he said. Your father asked specifically about the inheritance allocations, and your sister wanted to know if I had considered setting up a trust for her children if she has any in the future. Your mother brought up her plans to renovate their house, hinting that an advance on the inheritance would be helpful. What disgusting, pathetic people, Grandpa Earl said during our call. He was so upset by their behavior that he decided to change his will, cutting them out entirely and redirecting their portion to me. I told him I wasn't comfortable with this and that he shouldn't make such a big decision because of this situation, but he insisted it was his decision alone. I've been watching how they've treated you for years, he said. This wedding business was just the final straw. You're the only one who visits me without wanting something in return. The others only call when they need money or think I might be updating my will. I asked him not to tell them about his decision yet, hoping to avoid more drama. He agreed but said he was moving forward with the changes regardless. 2 days after this conversation, my mother sent me an email with the subject line, "We know what you did." The body of the email accused me of manipulating Grandpa Earl against them and threatened legal action if I didn't fix the situation. Somehow, they had found out about Grandpa Earl's decision despite his promise not to tell them. When I called Grandpa Earl to ask what happened, he explained that his lawyer had contacted him with questions about the will changes, and his assistant had accidentally called my parents' home phone instead of his cell phone to confirm the appointment. During that call, enough information was shared that my parents figured out what was happening. The harassment intensified after that, accusing me of manipulating Grandpa Earl. My mother sent emails claiming I had poisoned my grandfather's mind against them. My sister posted on social media calling me a gold-digging snake who stabbed her own family in the back for money. I called Grandpa Earl to warn him about what they were saying, but he laughed it off. "They can say whatever they want," he said. "I know the truth, and so do you. They're just showing their true colors." My husband and I discussed possibly moving since my family knows our current address. Our lease wasn't up for another 6 months, but we started looking at other apartments in different neighborhoods. Several friends offered their homes as temporary refuges if the harassment continued or we felt unsafe. I also consulted with a lawyer about the possibility of a restraining order. She advised documenting all contact attempts and said we might have grounds for harassment charges if their behavior continued or escalated. I started keeping a detailed log of every call, email, text, and visit, just in case. My husband worried about the toll this was taking on me. I wasn't sleeping well and had lost weight from stress. He suggested we take a weekend away to clear our heads, so we booked a small cabin in the mountains about 2 hours from our city. The break from constant vigilance was exactly what we needed. Update 3, it's been 2 weeks since my last update. Many of you suggested installing security cameras, which we did after my parents showed up unannounced for the 3rd time. We got a video doorbell for the front door and a small camera for the hallway outside our apartment. Our landlord approved the installation after we explained the situation. The cameras proved useful almost immediately. My mother showed up the day after installation, pressing the doorbell repeatedly and then shouting through the door when we didn't answer. The whole thing was captured on video, including her threats to call the police if I didn't stop this nonsense and talk to your family like an adult. My sister came by 2 days later with her husband, who looked uncomfortable to be there. She knocked more politely but then started taking pictures of our door and the hallway with her phone. When a neighbor asked what she was doing, she claimed to be worried about me and considering hiring a private investigator to check on my welfare. Our neighbor, who we had briefly explained the situation to, told her to leave or he would call building security. Yesterday, I received legal documents in the mail. My parents and sister are suing me, claiming I manipulated Grandpa Earl into changing his will through undue influence and fraudulent misrepresentation. They're asking the court to invalidate any changes to his will and to award them damages for emotional distress. I couldn't believe they would go this far. I immediately called Grandpa Earl, worried about how this stress would affect his health. To my surprise, he started laughing when I told him. Those delusional rats actually thought they could sue someone for their own awful behavior. "What a joke," he said. "I'm of sound mind, and no court will force me to give my money to anyone I don't want to. Don't worry." He explained that he had anticipated something like this might happen and had taken precautions. When he updated his will, he had his doctor perform a comprehensive cognitive assessment, which he passed with flying colors. He also had the signing witnessed by multiple people, including his lawyer and a notary. He documented his reasons for the changes, citing specific instances of my parents' and sister's behavior that concerned him. Grandpa Earl insisted on covering my legal expenses and had already contacted his attorney. When I spoke with the lawyer later that day, he confirmed they have essentially no case given Grandpa Earl's mental competence and documentation of his reasons for changing his will. These types of lawsuits rarely succeed unless there's clear evidence of diminished capacity or actual fraud, the lawyer explained. Your grandfather has been very thorough in protecting his wishes. I'm confident the case will be dismissed, though it might take some time to work through the legal process. The most hurtful part is the allegations in their lawsuit. They're portraying me as manipulative and money-hungry when I've repeatedly told Grandpa Earl not to change his will on my account. They claim I isolated my grandfather from the family, when in reality, they rarely visited him even before this conflict. They accuse me of feeding him false information about them, when all I did was tell him exactly what happened with the wedding plans. It's clear projection, but it still hurts to see these accusations in legal documents. Reading through the lawsuit, I could see they were desperate and grasping at straws. They couldn't accept that Grandpa Earl made this decision himself based on their own actions. My husband suggested countersuing for harassment, but I just want this to be over. Grandpa Earl's lawyer believes the case will be dismissed quickly, so we're focusing on our defense rather than counterattacks. He advised us to continue documenting any contact attempts and to avoid engaging with them in any way that could be misconstrued. The day after receiving the lawsuit, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was my sister using a friend's phone. The message read, "You think you're so clever? Just wait until this all comes out in court. Everyone will see what you really are." I didn't respond and blocked that number too. We're currently preparing our response to the lawsuit with Grandpa Earl's lawyer. He's confident it will be resolved in our favor, but warns it could take several months. In the meantime, we're trying to maintain our normal routine as much as possible, though it's difficult with the constant stress hanging over us. Final update, the lawsuit against me was dismissed 3 months ago, just as Grandpa Earl's lawyer predicted. The judge didn't even let it proceed to a full trial, granting our motion for summary judgment after reviewing all the evidence. In her ruling, the judge specifically noted that my parents and sister failed to provide any credible evidence of undue influence or diminished capacity on Grandpa Earl's part. During the preliminary hearing, Grandpa Earl testified about their behavior and his reasons for changing his will. He was sharp, articulate, and clearly in full command of his faculties. The judge was particularly impressed by his detailed records of their interactions and the medical documentation of his cognitive health. My parents and sister spent a fortune on legal fees pursuing this baseless case. They hired an expensive attorney who apparently kept assuring them they had a strong position despite all evidence to the contrary. According to what we heard through mutual acquaintances, they were convinced they would not only invalidate the will changes but also receive substantial damages from me. The dismissal of the case came as a shock to them. Their attorney had apparently been stringing them along, collecting fees while knowing the case had little merit. They filed a complaint against him with the State Bar Association, but it was dismissed after review. 2 weeks after losing the case, my mother emailed claiming they had been scammed by their lawyer who promised them a guaranteed win. She said they had depleted their savings on legal fees and were now struggling financially. She asked if I could find it in my heart to help them, suggesting that since I was now set to inherit Grandpa Earl's money eventually, I could afford to be generous. I didn't respond. A few days later, my father called Grandpa Earl directly, asking for a loan until they got back on their feet. He blamed their financial troubles on bad legal advice rather than their own vindictive actions. When Grandpa Earl refused, my father said, "After all we've done for you over the years, this is how you repay us." Grandpa Earl told him, "If you contact me or my granddaughter again, the next legal action will be a restraining order." My father didn't take the threat seriously and called again the next day. This time, Grandpa Earl didn't answer, but had his lawyer send a cease and desist letter. After that, they finally stopped contacting him. My sister made one last attempt to reach me through a mutual friend. She sent a message saying she wanted to clear the air and repair our relationship. Our friend, who knew the whole story, asked if I wanted to respond. I declined, having learned that my sister's idea of repairing relationships usually involved me apologizing for things I hadn't done wrong. Since then, we've had peace. No more surprise visits, no more messages through friends, no more social media drama. They seem to have finally accepted that their actions have permanent consequences. Grandpa Earl's health has remained stable. I visit him weekly, and we've developed an even closer relationship. I guess that's it. Thanks for reading and helping, guys.